I ruined a wedding because the bride told everyone I was a homewrecker in love with the groom. Ada for wearing a white dress to a wedding after being specifically requested to by the bride. When I was 5, my family moved and my next-door neighbor turned out to be this girl Bella who was only a year older than me. We immediately connected and grew up thick as thieves. Even though I was a couple of hours away at college and Bella at home, we still remained close because she would come visit me frequently, stay with me, and we had great times. I met Barrett my sophomore year and realized we had a lot of friends in common. He was a smart, attractive guy, so we ended up hooking up a few times after study sessions. It was fun, but there wasn't really long-term chemistry, so we remained friends. We never even talked about dating. We weren't close after that, but we were on group text threads together and saw each other frequently at parties. During a party my senior year, I introduced Bella to Barrett and it was love at first sight for her. She interrogated me about him and I informed her of our history. She seemed pretty upset about the fact that we had hooked up, but I assured her that there was absolutely nothing romantic there and that she had my blessing to pursue him. She did, and after a few months, they started officially dating. Bella was over the moon and so in love with Barrett. After I graduated, I accepted a job 6 hours away from home while Bella and Barrett moved in together in my hometown. I visited them frequently at first, but life got busy, so we ended up seeing each other annually during the holidays. Last Christmas, my family hosted a Christmas Eve party with our two families at which Barrett proposed to Bella. It was a heartfelt proposal and everybody was thrilled for them. Bella wanted to talk about nothing but wedding planning that holiday and we had tons of fun brainstorming ideas together. There were no signs of what was to come. Over the course of the holidays, Bella kept mentioning that I would be her maid of honor and I was so thrilled to be formally asked. Except that never happened. In fact, she started screening my calls. I barely heard from her for months. Eventually, I received a save the date in the mail and still hadn't heard from her about whether I was in the wedding party, so I got her on the phone and asked her. I was pretty disappointed by the news. She told me that she had thought it through and didn't think that I should be in the wedding at all because I lived so far away. She thought it would make coordinating bridal events too difficult. Instead of me, she made her cousin her maid of honor, but she doesn't even like this cousin, so I didn't understand why she would give such an important role to someone she can't stand. Especially since I was her closest and oldest friend. I even introduced her to her fiancé. I wanted to be given a proper opportunity to be her maid of honor, so I told her that I could get the time off work, would buy plane tickets, whatever was required of me, to participate. I didn't think that it was going to be as challenging as she thought. She just told me her mind was set and she had already asked her cousin, so she couldn't go back on her word, even though she did months ago when she kept saying I would be her maid of honor. She then asked if I was going to be bringing someone to the wedding. I was a little confused by this question because I just had a bad breakup and she knew all about what went down. I told her that since I wasn't seeing anybody currently, I'd probably be attending solo. She told me that she would keep my +1 open until the last possible minute and encouraged me to try to find a date so I wouldn't be lonely. I thought this was a nice gesture, but reassured her that I would be fine with my family and friends in my hometown. The next few months passed by and I barely heard from Bella. This wasn't like her. I could have reached out more, but I was still hurt by the fact I wasn't in the wedding party. I also saw on social media that she had an engagement party that she had not told me about or invited me to. That also hurt, but I didn't say anything since I figured we were just growing apart. Then, 6 weeks prior to the wedding, I got a call from Bella. She told me that one of her bridesmaids had dropped out and she was hoping that I could fill in. I wouldn't be going to any of the events as those were already booked, but I would be in the wedding party. That was enough for me, so I gladly accepted. She told me that she was doing a reverse color palette for the bridal party where all of the bridesmaids and groomsmen were wearing white, and she and the groom were wearing black. This didn't seem that strange to me since Bella has always liked to stand out and has unconventional taste. She apologized for the late notice and asked if I could find a white dress in time. I had a white slip dress already, so I sent her a picture of it on the call to see if it would work. She verbally approved it and tagged it with a thumbs up on the text chain. The wedding was at noon, so we were supposed to meet to do hair and makeup at the venue at 8 a.m. I left my parents' home early and arrived in sweats with my dress in a bag. I greeted Bella and the other girls, then we drank champagne before getting ready. This was the closest I felt to Bella in months and I was having a lot of fun. About 2 hours prior to the ceremony, Bella told everybody to get our dresses on so we could do some pictures. I grabbed my bag and went into the bathroom to change. When I re-entered the room, every last bridesmaid was in a blue dress. I was the only one in white. My stomach dropped. My mind raced back to the conversation I had with Bella. She had said white, right? I hadn't misheard? No, I was certain. She had called out the reverse color scheme. I had Googled it. No, this was a setup. Bella was in the middle of the room in a bathrobe with a resigned look on her face. She said to her cousin, "I told you she was going to do something like this." Her cousin approached me and asked what I was wearing. I mumbled that Bella had told me to wear white. Bella stared back and huffed out a laugh. She said how of course I would have to make today all about me. The cousin started screaming at me, going off on me about how I was jealous, in love with Barrett, and how completely unhinged I was. Honestly, I froze at that moment. I had no idea what she was talking about, but I wouldn't have come to know the truth until much later. Ada for secretly planning on moving out despite my sister-in-law expecting to have her wedding at my place? I worked really hard at building my relationship with Ryan. I accommodated him into my schedule, did things to help him feel loved and appreciated, and did my best to be a doting girlfriend. I'm ashamed to admit it, but after all I've done, I can't stand him. I don't even hate him, I'm just repulsed. I discovered that he's extremely immature, and not in a fun-loving way. Whenever I point this out, he says he's like Peter Pan. This used to cause emotional distress, but I've passed that. He's a very controlling person who still thinks being mommy's little boy is some kind of an achievement. He talks about his childhood very vividly and acts like he's still able to get away with anything. Ryan describes his intimacy encounters with his exes in detail, despite making me feel horrible. I don't feel appreciated. He shushes me whenever I bring up my heritage because it's only keeping me tied to the past. He criticized my love for my childhood home and got very triggered because I mentioned some dear high school friends who happen to be guys. I've built a good career while he games all the time. I'm fed up. In 3 years, I worked hard to complete my MBA, consolidate my small business, and now, I have some major companies as clients. In the meantime, Ryan keeps relying on favors to get a job and he keeps getting fired. I've asked him to control his instinct to get freebies. He's content with getting free stuff instead of actually buying something that he likes. Last summer, he dragged me to a kiosk at the farmer's market because the guy offered him a free sandwich. What's eating me up is that he can't give me a straight answer after I've become suspicious that he lied about his degree. This is very serious, because it means that he lied about his prospects and he allowed me to include him in my life, and somehow, he's tried to force me to be responsible for him. I was made to believe he had found a job only to find out that he was attending board games tournaments at a local indie gaming shop. My feelings for him have changed since last New Year's Eve when he stood me up to go see his family and I wasn't allowed to join. We had already made plans for a quiet and romantic evening and I brought the food and the wine and he waited until 2 p.m. to let me know that I would be spending it alone. He said mother-in-law needed him because New Year's Eve gives her flashbacks from father-in-law. Father-in-law left her in the 90s and married his mistress in the 2000s. I felt horrible. He knew New Year's Eve is important to me. He knows that I was looking forward to a romantic evening and that my family lives on the other side of the country. He knows being here is a sacrifice for me because I have kids that I bend over backwards to spend time with and that flying every Wednesday to see them is a huge part of being present. I took a client whose deadline was January 2nd and I agreed because I needed the money. That was a game changer for me, but my heart was broken. After that I tried to work around not losing my love for him, but what I feel is that I'm experiencing the pain of losing respect for this man. I can't stand it, I can't even look at him, and I feel very guilty because I'm finding my happiness behind his back. I feel like I'm doing something wrong. I constantly make up supposed work schedules just to get away from him. His sister asked me to allow her to have her wedding at my place because she can't afford anything else, and now she's not speaking to me but she still expects me to host her. I agreed on having the wedding where I live because I thought we could actually get to know each other and it would help to create a good relationship, which is important to me. I don't know if she's not speaking to me because she feels she doesn't need me anymore or because there's something I don't know that's happening. I'm mentioning this because sister-in-law and mother-in-law have a history of playing victim and sister-in-law finds ways to get aggravated constantly. I tried to talk to her and she has simply ignored my calls and my messages. I thought that because of this, she had decided to have her wedding elsewhere, but now I'm being informed that I need to remove my pets on my furniture so that she can use my living room for her ceremony. I texted and called to get clarification and was left on scene, and honestly, I got pissed. It feels like I'm begging to be a part of their family. I'm so angry, and I told him, and basically he kind of shrugged. I've decided to just move out without telling him. I talked to my landlord so that I can leave 2 months earlier. I'll just take my pets and everything I own while he's at work and just drive off. I'm feeling tired of feeling lonely within this relationship. Last month, I was inducted into a career guild and refused to take him as my +1 because I didn't want any pictures of him next to me. It would ruin the moment. I don't owe him anything. He left me basically alone when I had the virus and was very irritated whenever I asked if he could buy me some food. I owe him nothing of what I am as he has never celebrated me while I bent over backwards to help his mom despite her attitude. I spent my birthday alone because he was busy. All he does is ask me how much more money I'm going to get in the future. I know this is my fault because at some point I promised him that I would help him fund his dream restaurant, but that was back when things were great between us. I know it's wrong to go back on my word, but I can help it. I don't want to be in his future and I don't want to invest in his life. I'm still down for what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm being an a-hole for planning on leaving him without telling him. I just don't want his family to yell at me like they did to my other sister-in-law when she left my brother-in-law. Also, sister-in-law can be very volatile and both she and mother-in-law claim they have assaulted people, but I don't know if they are just bragging. He has been asking what's going on because I can barely hide my contempt whenever he tries to initiate a conversation about helping him create a business. I'm fed up with having to listen to his insistent questions that are making me feel very uncomfortable. I told him I'm not an insistent person. I didn't harass him to come to my place when he stood me up on New Year's Eve. I didn't insist that he give me a present for my birthday because he's an adult. He says it's different since a business is a lifelong situation and a birthday gift loses value. I'm clear on the end of our relationship, but I'm kind of doubtful about ruining the wedding. It's 10 days away. Am I the a-hole? My husband told me he's sick of babysitting our newborn, please help. I feel like I'm going crazy, and I've been cooped up at home with a screaming baby for so long it's perfectly possible that I've lost my mind. I'm 25 years old. I met my husband when I was 20, and he was 30. Even though we had a pretty significant age gap, our relationship always seemed to work. I liked that he was older and could guide me through life in a way someone my own age couldn't. He was very smart and charming, and I fell in love with him fast. We worked in an office together, he was one of the supervisors, and I was just a summer intern, but we ended up falling for each other despite our differences. My husband proposed after we had been dating for about 8 months, and I said yes since I thought he was the most perfect man a woman could ask for. I had always known him to be this level-headed, mature guy, so his behavior ever since I gave birth to our first child had been shocking and disappointing to me. Our baby has recently been having trouble sleeping, and I have been the only one getting up literally every single time the baby wakes up. I sat my husband down and told him very honestly how tired I was and that I needed support from him, especially while our baby was going through this restless period. He said that I should have expected this from a newborn, but he would try to help more either way. This only lasted about a week. He did start waking up to comfort the baby, but he just sort of stopped doing it after a week. I would always try to wake him up and ask him to go check on her, but he just grumbled and put a pillow over his head to better ignore me. He was starting to make me feel so alone, and I ended up asking advice from both my own mom and my mother-in-law. Both of them were very supportive, and both seemed upset when I told them about my husband's neglect. My mother-in-law actually called my husband the next day and chewed him out, telling him he needed to step up and take care of his child. It was her words towards him that really snapped him into action, and my husband started waking up every night for the baby and just generally watching her more often and actually giving me breaks to relax from childcare. My husband worked and told me to quit my job when I got pregnant, so I was home with a screaming baby 24/7, and I really appreciated that he had started to take her off my hands so I could have some time for myself again, even if it was just an hour or two here or there. Well, I guess it was all a pipe dream, because after only about 3 weeks of my husband actually watching the baby, he freaked out one night when the baby started crying and screamed at the top of his lungs that he was tired of this shit. His booming yell only made the baby start crying more, and he followed me into the baby's nursery while I tried to comfort her, still yelling. He called me lazy and said he was sick and tired of babysitting our little brat and that this was a wife's duty, not his, and he had no place watching the baby this much. He said that I knew what I was signing up for when I got pregnant, and I was unreasonable to expect this much help from him. I didn't even try and argue with him, I just cried and fed my baby while trying to tune him out as he yelled and yelled at us in the middle of the night. I slept in the baby's room that night. It was the first time I ever felt scared of my husband. I resent him more every day, and I'm starting to think I made a huge mistake having children with this man. Well, it only took a little while longer for my fears to be concerned, but Terry's no going back now. Update: in my first post, I spoke about how my husband had been neglecting our baby in the middle of the night and leaving me with 100% of the childcare. I had contacted his mom about how he had been treating the baby, and she pressured him into actually watching our child more often and comforting her in the middle of the night too. Give me a break. He had only done it for a couple of weeks before he had a screaming breakdown at me in the middle of the night where he said he was done babysitting our daughter. Since then, I felt like I have been walking on eggshells around my husband. I try not to complain about anything, and I am the only one who takes care of our baby at all now. He doesn't ask to hold her, he doesn't change her, and it's been weeks since the last time he got up to comfort her in the middle of the night. Even though I stopped asking him for help, my husband has still continued to show signs of aggression towards me and the baby. A little while after he blew up at me, he started having dramatic, aggressive reactions in the middle of the night when our daughter would cry. He would curse really loud, punch the bed, and once he even threw his phone at the wall we shared with the nursery, I guess to try and make the baby stop crying. It was awful to see, and the way he is escalating only continued to scare me. Looking back, I feel like the worst mom in the world for not removing my baby and me from that environment earlier. It was only getting more dangerous for us, and I should have protected my little girl when I still could. I want to break down and cry when I think back to this night. I can barely think about it without shaking and freaking out. It was the middle of the night, and my daughter woke up crying as usual. She woke up maybe 2 or 3 times a night, and I know it was frustrating, but I never thought my husband was capable of crossing a line like this. I heard my daughter's cry, and I started to rise from bed when I heard my husband wake up and scream, F. Fuck CK. It was terrifying and so jarring, and before I could do anything, he was storming out of our room and into the nursery. I followed as quickly as possible and started begging him to calm down. That's when, to my horror, my husband walked over to my poor baby's crib, picked her up, and shook her like a rag doll. I had never seen him act so unhinged and violent, and I was a mess as I begged him to put her down. He was screaming in her little face to shut up as he shook her, and the image is burned into my mind forever. It was the darkest, cruelest thing I had ever seen another person do. And before he could put her down, I knew I wanted nothing more to do with this man. He was a monster, and after that, I would never see him as the man I loved again. My husband eventually put my screaming baby down and went back to bed as if nothing happened. I took my baby straight to the hospital to get her checked out, and by some miracle, she was okay. I went to my mom's from the hospital and told her what happened. I also called my mother-in-law and told her what happened as well. She sobbed on the phone and apologized over and over again for her son's actions. I contacted a divorce lawyer the very same week, and I decided I never wanted to see my husband again. Because I had a record of the hospital visit, I was granted a temporary restraint order for my husband while our divorce was being finalized. It was the scariest, loneliest period of my life, but I know I did the right thing by leaving my husband and making sure my baby was never around anyone who would hurt her and jeopardize her life like that. I just thank God everything for letting her go unharmed the day my ex shook her like that, and I just wish I could erase that disturbing image from my mind forever. My entitled mother wore a wedding dress at my brother's wedding and tried to marry him. My mom and I have always had a difficult relationship. I'm her scapegoat and my brother is her golden child. He can really do no wrong in her eyes. I'm expected to do housework every time I visit while my brother sits around doing nothing. My mom expects me to cater to his every need if we both visit at the same time. Last Christmas, we were all going to my mom's house and she swore up and down that she did not need any help from anybody. Well, my mom actually gave me the wrong arrival time because she wanted me to get there earlier and help her out. Normally I wouldn't mind, especially because I did offer to help before, but I was the only one there. I felt like a caterer instead of a guest. I set up the entire house ready for Christmas and then she had me serve everybody at the table while she sat down and complained about how exhausted she was from all the work she did. Mind you, I basically did everything around the house. Then, she wanted me to wash everybody's dishes and told all of her guests to not help me because I could handle it and they're just dishes. She bragged about how if she could make this entire house spotless all on her own, I could get my pretty hands dirty for one day. And it didn't even stop there for the night. All the men started watching some football game and my mom made me give my brother anything he asked for. He even went as far as asking for a massage, though he swears he was just messing around because he noticed how my mom was making me do everything, but my mom would not let me say no and insisted I give him the massage regardless of what either of us said. It was such a humiliating experience for both of us. After that, I just stopped visiting and I've been avoiding her. I only talk to her out of necessity, which still isn't a lot. Despite all of this, my brother and I are still very close and I'm good friends with my sister-in-law. My mom, however, has treated my sister-in-law terribly ever since she started dating my brother 5 years ago. During the Christmas party, I even heard my mom badmouth my sister-in-law and the only reason she doesn't like her is because she thinks she stole her golden child away from her. It didn't help that my brother announced that when they get married, they're going to move to a different state, far, far away, from our mom. It was actually my brother's idea since he always told me he wanted to leave the state because we've lived here our whole lives. But, my mom has placed all the blame on my sister-in-law and accused her of trying to break their bond by making them move. Things only got worse when my brother and sister-in-law had their wedding in October of this year. My mom showed up in a floor-length white wedding dress. She had this poop-eating grin the entire time and it was so obvious she was proud and happy of herself when she saw my sister-in-law on the verge of tears. At that point, I had enough of my mom berating my sister-in-law all the time because of her weird feelings for my brother. My sister-in-law is the sweetest person I know and I could not have my horrible mother ruin her wedding. So without thinking, I just grabbed a bottle of red wine and dumped the whole thing down my mom's front. She flipped out and screamed at me that I had ruined her special day. Hold up, what? I asked her what she meant by that, but she wouldn't answer me. She just kept shouting that I was awful and she always hated me. She said this is why she preferred my brother to me, because I was crazy. These were all things I knew so I didn't let it affect me. However, she had exposed her true colors in front of all the guests. My mom had been called out on her favoritism countless times, but she always said she loved me and my brother the same. But she had just told the families the truth and I was so happy. As for my brother, he kicked my mom out of the wedding and said it was going to take him a lot of time to trust her again. My mom went home crying and she actually didn't attempt to come back. After the wedding, my brother talked to me in private and apologized for never standing up for me. He said he liked being the favorite and all the extra attention he got, but our mom went too far today. He said he hadn't realized he was enabling her behavior, but his wife had talked to him about the favoritism and how it needed to stop. He even confessed that he was rethinking inviting my mom, but his wife said he should give her one last chance to be a mature adult. Trying to upstage his wife was the last straw, so he's going to cut contact with her for now. My roommate stinks and refuses to shower. I've thrown up twice already. I am completely sympathetic to the fact that having a shower may be a sensory issue for some people, and Chloe claims she has this issue. With this being said, she knew she was going away for a week. We had 6 months' notice, on a marine biology field course, sharing a room with 2 other people. We were all friends before this trip. When Chloe is at home, she has a bath once every 10 days and is bathed by her boyfriend. We received absolutely no warning of this, nor did we receive a warning that she would not be planning to shower or brush her teeth for the duration of the trip. Marine biology is quite labor-intensive, and of course involves standing on the beach and literally in the ocean. This trip also included miles-long walks every day to get to these beaches. Had Chloe had a strip/baby wipe wash every evening, then the smell wouldn't have gotten to this point, but my god you guys, the smell. It was straight up onions, vinegar and body odor. I threw up twice because of it. Actually the worst smell from something living I've ever smelt. At this point, 4 days of walking and climbing rock pools, we could no longer deal with the smell at all. Even our other friends that would walk past the room would gag. I really am not being dramatic. Instead of using antiperspirant/deodorant, she was using a perfume under her arms, and on her feet, making the smell a million times worse. To top all of this off, there was an outbreak of bacterial meningitis in our class whilst we were away. It was only at this point that we asked her to shower. We only asked her to shower to reduce the risk of infection, and we did also mention the smell at this point. We all weren't sure about the ins and outs of this illness, and how it is spread, but we wanted to be as clean as possible after seeing our classmates and being within close confines of them all day. We were treating it like a virus. We did ask nicely. We said the room smelled and that if we all have a shower, we didn't know it was a sensory issue at this point, then it would improve the smell and the situation for us all. My friend showered, I showered, then Chloe left the room to go see some of her friends. We were absolutely baffled. The next day, we asked less nicely. It was ripe. She walks out of the room, and returns 5 minutes later with one of our uni lecturers. She had spoken to the uni lecturer and accused us of bullying her. She has also made an anonymous submission to our university's drama Facebook page which says the following: if you want to go on this trip, don't. I was bullied so much I cried every night and the staff did nothing. I know the 2 girls who did it will see this post and here is my message to you both. My family and I aren't happy, and we will be taking this matter to the police for bullying and to the university for non-academic misconduct. We are at university now. You would think people would have matured but apparently not. Bullying is serious. Now this came as a complete shock. She had not been crying every night, or at least not that we noticed, nor did we give her a reason to cry every night. The only thing we can possibly think of, and we've checked with our other friends, was the mention of the smell and the fact she needs to shower. It hurts us that this has upset her so much, but our point is, if you know you are going away for a week, and you do not plan on showering, or know you have difficulty doing this, wouldn't you warn your roommates? Plan to have a baby wipe wash, which she admitted she is fine to do. If we had known about the awful personal hygiene this 21-year-old girl has, then there is no way we would have agreed to share a room with her. So, am I the a-hole? My 34-year-old husband is obsessed with our boss's 20-year-old daughter. My husband and I work at a small firm. During the work time our boss would occasionally bring his then teenage daughter to work. She should have been around 15 when we first met her, and had her interact with the employees and stuff to show her what we were doing, how things work, etc. Fast forward to January of this year, the boss brought her in, officially, letting us know that she will be taking over a good deal of his work overlooking things. We were initially hesitant, considering she was so young, turned 20 this year, but ultimately, she wasn't taking over, more so learning to handle the business while the boss managed other work. It helped that she herself was also very keen on cooperating and taking advice, often holding meetings to discuss things and making sure she herself is the last to leave work almost every time. It's been an overall good development in that regard. The issue started initially a few months after she started. She would occasionally hold office events, just to lighten the mood, and this earned her a lot of praise, from all of us, since it's not something the old boss would have time to look into. We were all talking about her, so it didn't feel too weird at first when my husband joined in on the praising. How impressive it is, she's so young but so mature, how she's been a breath of fresh air in the office, everyone's so motivated to work cause of her, etc. With hindsight, it seems like that was just his in on talking about her with me in general. Every now and then, he'd start singing her praises, when we're at home, a huge talking point always being how she's so mature for her age and understanding, even pointing out how we weren't at that age. I didn't take it much to heart, until one time I joked that it was fine if he was immature at times, and that I would love him regardless, and his response was something along the lines of, well, you were too, unlike her. I think that was the first time I felt a bit bad, because it felt like he actually was just comparing me to her now. But I tried not to think too much about it. This slowly spiraled too, going from talking about her maturity to looks, how she can still look good while being so busy with studies and work, how she, and I quote, was definitely more gifted compared to other girls. Once, out of insecurity, I asked if he thought she was prettier than me. He gave me an, of course you're attractive to me, but objectively, like, not considering my attraction to you, she is prettier. This messed with me for a while, and we ended up having a fight, where I essentially banned him from bringing her up with me, if it's not work-related. Also adding to it, was the fact that he started taking extra work every now and then, and working overtime, and while I initially thought it was to just earn extra money, I later found out it was simply because he knew she usually heads home late too, usually after most if not all office employees left. Fast forward to a few days back, the weekend happened. My husband was out with his friends, and my laptop was being repaired, so I used his laptop, without his permission. I had put some videos on autopay as background noise as I did some work. When I opened his PC folder and on the left quick access bar, there was a folder with our boss's daughter's name. I had to click it, and when I did, I actively couldn't believe what I was seeing. A folder of over 1K plus pictures of her, screenshots from Instagram and other apps, any and every picture he could find of her, and an insane number of pictures just taken without her consent, with either a hidden camera or his phone at the office. It all ranged from her just sitting or working, to some from a high enough angle to get cleavage or down blouse, and even a few under the table shots. This creeped me out, beyond anything, since it was almost impossible to place my husband, who I have always known as the sweetest guy, for the 6 years we have been married, as someone who would do something like this. I was shocked and just didn't really know how to react. If I should feel disgusted or sad, angry, I don't know. But then, it got worse. I used a search to look up her name on his laptop and found something that basically turned any form of sorrow or sadness I would have felt into just pure disgust. He basically had a folder poorly hidden deep in a number of folders, just full of Photoshop pictures of her, some solo, some with him, some with other members of the office, and some just absolutely vile and disgusting. I was furious, but I also didn't want him to know yet. So I acted normal that night, and then the next day, I called up my cousin, asked if she needed help with her pregnancy, and used that as an excuse to move in and help her for a bit. I have talked to my husband, though limited, mostly through text and occasionally at work, but for the last 4 days, I have been living with my cousin. Honestly, I am disgusted, but I also don't know what to do exactly. I feel a mixture of being cheated on, which, I know he didn't do anything with her, but still, I can't explain it. But on top of that, I feel disgusted that my husband was this sort of a man. What should I do?
My brother missed his wedding and blamed me. Now my family hates me. I still can't believe this happened or that I'm taking all the blame for it. My brother was supposed to get married a week ago, but he never arrived at the wedding venue on time. I know why, and because I was technically with him for a night, my family thinks it was my responsibility to take care of him. Well, the night before his wedding, my brother called all of his friends and talked about having one last day of freedom before he married the old ball and chain. He apparently wanted one last night as a single man. Mind you, we already had a bachelor party, so I don't know what gave him the idea to do another one. His friends were all up for it though, so we all drove to a STRP club of his choice. Something about having to live with the same woman for the rest of his life gave him the ick. I reminded him the entire time that he shouldn't drink too much because the very next day was his wedding. He told me to lay off and he knew what he was doing. At some point I did stop telling him and just watched him go to town with all the alcohol he was drinking. I'm not much of a drinker, in fact I try to stay away from it as much as possible, so I only drank 1 beer and called it a night. Everyone else was insanely wasted though. I had to call Ubers for the friends and drove the groomsmen and my brother to his house. I went back to my own house where I slept soundly. The next day, I went about my day before getting ready for my brother's wedding. I'm actually not one of his groomsmen, I was just a guest, which is why I don't think it's fair that all the responsibility latched onto me out of nowhere. If anything, our older brother should have been blamed since he's the best man and was tasked with making sure the groom attended the wedding. So I drove up to the wedding and my dad instantly started asking me about my brother's whereabouts. I told him I haven't seen him since last night when I dropped him off at his house after drinking for hours. That's when they told me no one from the groom's party was here and they've been trying to contact them for hours. An hour goes by and my parents try to delay the wedding as much as possible. At this point the bride finds out that her husband is nowhere to be found and immediately thinks the worst. He got cold feet and was standing her up at her wedding. I wouldn't put it past my brother with the way he was acting yesterday. He seemed like he did not want to get married and I actually felt bad for her. The wedding was delayed as much as possible and my father went to get my brother from his house, which was 2 hours away. The sun was setting by the time we got word that my father had picked him up and was on his way. My brother talked to the bride who had been crying all day. Her makeup was smeared and her hair got all messy. I tried to comfort her by saying that he definitely was not thinking of leaving her and he just overslept because he had a crazy night out, but she didn't believe anything I said. Because we were there all day, the guests ate the food, the priest had grown tired of waiting, and the bride even changed out of her wedding dress. It was not an enjoyable wedding. My brother came and instead of hugging his crying bride, he sucker punched me. I yelled at him asking what the hell was wrong with him and he started blaming me for making him miss his wedding. I saw my father looking disappointed at me as well. We started arguing back and forth and it wasn't until the bride got in between us that the screaming match stopped. I had told everybody who asked what happened. My brother went out, partied too hard, I dropped him off at his house with all his groomsmen, went home, and then came to the wedding. Everybody had believed me, but when my dad told this to my brother as he was berating him during the 2-hour car ride, my brother spit out a different story to save his own SS. Apparently, it was my idea to go party and he didn't want to go, but I dragged him. He said I was the one that had taken him to a STRP club and said he needed to let loose before he married the old ball and chain. Then, I got him wasted on purpose because I wanted him to miss his wedding since I was jealous of his relationship. He told everyone that I was the one who wanted to marry the bride, so by making him miss his own wedding, I could swoop in and pull the if you ever need someone to talk to card to try to win her over. Everyone immediately believed his sob story, so they all turned their backs on me and villainized me. I didn't even have the friends to back me up because they were all so intoxicated. I'm surprised they remember we went out. It didn't hurt that my brother had used factual details in his story and just swapped it to make me seem like the bad guy. One of them even said they remembered someone saying old ball and chain, which confirmed my brother's story. They asked me why I didn't bring that up, and I said it was because I didn't want the bride to feel even worse than she already did by bringing up that her fiancé called her that. Nobody believed me and said I was a liar since I left out all sorts of details in my side of the story. My brother kicked me out of his wedding, and even a week later, I'm still getting messages from my parents telling me I embarrassed them. My brother did get married, but because he's on his honeymoon, I haven't contacted him, but trust me, when he gets back, I'll be the one sucker punching him.
My mother-in-law spilled hot coffee on me for not wanting to name my baby after her dead husband. I am pregnant with my fiancé's first child. We've chosen to keep the gender a secret and just buy clothes we think are cute. It's been so much fun, but 3 days ago it kinda changed. I was with my mother-in-law and she was asking us about baby names. She suggested a few: Theodore, Jackson, Lars, and her persistent favorite Jerson. I was confused when I heard it, but apparently it was her late husband's name. He died when my fiancé was 5 of an overdose, so she suggested we call him that. I responded, what if it's a girl, and no offense but that name is really uncommon and very special. It kind of came out wrong, but she started getting snarky with me saying, it's a boy. I can tell. She then rubbed my stomach, without consent, also with her knowing I'm sensitive to touch due to autism. I brushed her hand away and suggested, how about Sean? She showed the most disgusted face and said, no. We need an American name. Not Irish. You're not Irish anymore, you're American. I looked at her dumbfounded. I was literally born and raised in Cork before moving at 19. She knows this. But I tried to suggest another to move on. How about Asha? She looked at me disgustedly. My baby is a boy. A boy, she yelled louder. I tried to calm her down. Okay, how about Leo? That apparently was her breaking point. That's when it happened. She took the cup of coffee she had and threw it at me. It was hot. Hot, I tell you. I quickly got up and left immediately. I didn't want to stay there any longer. I just stopped by McDonald's to clean myself up. I drove home after that and told my husband. He was shocked and immediately went to tell his mother off. And of course this is where the crocodile tears come. She threatened me. She said I'd never be able to meet my grandbaby if I didn't butt out and let her pick the name after I suggested your father's name, she cried. My husband is unsure of who to believe. He said that even if I was telling the truth, I shouldn't have riled her up, that her husband was the love of her life, and it would mean so much to her if we named our baby after him. He's sleeping on the couch from now on. Am I being too harsh?